Ready, the Indiana Fever beat the Washington Mystics in the first game of the Commissioner's Cup 85-76, and we had a few good games.
Indiana just beat the Mystics 85-76, but this was about way more than a final score. This was a fight for respect, revenge, and proving everyone wrong. On June 3rd, the Fever walked into the Commissioner's Cup opener, carrying the weight of a season everyone said was finished. You won't believe how one player's shift in the third quarter changed everything and flipped the entire narrative. How does a team written off after losing its superstar rise up and silence the league's loudest doubters? It came down to a veteran spark, a second-half score, or catching fire, and a surprise newcomer stepping into the spotlight. Meanwhile, there's good news on the Caitlin Clark front. Her injury is looking better, and as soon as word spread about her possible return, viewership for Indiana's matchups against the Sun and Sky surged. Even in their recent win over the Mystics, you could feel a little of that Clark effect in the air. But before we dive into all that, let's talk about the Indiana Fever's incredible performance. For Indiana, the story really started with the pain of losing Caitlin Clark to a left quad strain on May 26th. The reaction was immediate. Analysts, fans, and even rival teams rushed to write the Fever off. Suddenly, every conversation was about how lost Indiana looked without their superstar. 3 straight losses followed, each one a little more demoralizing than the last, and each one feeding the narrative that the Fever were finished. The first defeat against the New York Liberty wasn't shock. The Liberty are a powerhouse, and Indiana was reeling from Clark's injury. But 2 days later, on May 28th, came the one that really stung. The Fever faced the Washington Mystics, and it wasn't just a loss. It was an 83-77 beat, down where the Mystics walked all over Indiana, treating them like an overmatched opponent. Washington's attitude was obvious. They didn't just want to win, they wanted to make a point that Indiana didn't belong on the same court. For the Fever, it was more than just a bad night. It was a slap in the face. That tension wasn't new. It had been brewing since the preseason, when Sophie Cunningham became a target for the Mystics' physical play and trash talk. Washington didn't miss a chance to shove, push, and try to intimidate Indiana, especially Cunningham. The message was clear. The Fever were supposed to be punching bags, not rivals. By the time the regular season rolled around, the animosity was real, and the May 28th game brought all up again. Indiana didn't have an answer that night. The Mystics' swagger and the Fever's frustration set the tone for what came next. The third loss, a May 31st defeat to the Connecticut Sun, capped a 3-game skid that had many riding off the Fever without Clark. Headlines echoed the sentiment. Indiana looked like a team waiting on their star to heal, but behind the scenes, something changed. The Fever stopped waiting and started playing as a unit. They knew one player couldn't replace Clark, so they leaned on each other, moving the ball, casting teammates, and finding a fence in unexpected places. It paid off in the revenge game, where they totaled 21 assists and everyone contributed.